It's all right. I'm not supposed to be here either. I take it you're not. Are you alone?
What are you doing here? Looking for shells?
No, I'm just looking.
Stay where you are.
I can assure you my intentions are strictly honorable.
The name's Bond, James Bond, but today we're talking about someone who nearly stole the show from the suave secret agent, Ursula Andress. The original Bond girl, the woman who defined cinematic sex appeal, and the one who almost went bare naked in Dr. No, or at least that's what could have happened. But before we dive into that steamy behind-the-scenes detail, let's talk about the movie that started it all, the first James Bond film, Dr. No. When Dr. No premiered in 1962, it marked the beginning of a cinematic legend. Based on Ian Fleming's 1958 novel, this film introduced us to the world of MI6, exotic locations, deadly villains, and of course the unshakable secret agent James Bond, played by a then relatively unknown Sean Connery. But bringing Bond to the big screen wasn't easy, and the film's journey from page to premiere is packed with fascinating stories. United Artists had its doubts about the project, and the movie was produced on a shoestring budget of just $1 million. That might not sound like much, but for comparison, the latest Bond film, No Time to Die, had a budget of around $250 million. Because of the limited funds, the filmmakers had to get creative. Many of the lavish sets were actually made from simple materials. Dr. No's massive aquarium, just blown-up footage of regular-sized fish. M's office, the paintings on the walls were actually cardboard cutouts. But despite these limitations, Dr. No set a visual standard for the Bond franchise, thanks to the incredible work of production designer Ken Adam. Of course, what's a Bond film without a formidable villain? Joseph Wiseman played the titular Dr. No, a reclusive scientist with metal hands and a plan to disrupt American space launches. He was the first of many over-the-top Bond villains, setting the template for the likes of Goldfinger, Blofeld, and even modern foes like Raul Silva. His underground lair, complete with high-tech gadgets and elaborate decor, became a staple of Bond films. It also inspired many real-world designs. Believe it or not, some business magnates and political figures have reportedly drawn inspiration from Bond villains when designing their own luxury hideaways. Now let's talk about the leading lady. Ursula Andress as Honey Ryder was unforgettable. The moment she steps out of the ocean in a white bikini is considered one of the most iconic scenes in movie history. But what many people don't know is that in Ian Fleming's novel, Honey Ryder was originally described as emerging from the water completely naked. That idea didn't make it to the screen, thanks to the strict censorship rules of the time. Instead, costume designer Tessa Prendergast created a now legendary two-piece swimsuit, complete with a knife belt, that sent bikini sales soaring worldwide. Andress's casting was something of an accident. 2 weeks before filming began, producers still hadn't found their Honey Ryder. That's when they saw a photograph of Ursula Andress in a wet t-shirt. That one picture was enough for them to offer her the role, without even meeting her in person. It was a risky move, but it paid off. The bikini she wore became so legendary that it was later auctioned for £35,000, and her character became the blueprint for Bond girls for decades to come. Interestingly, Andress's voice wasn't even her own in the film. Due to her thick Swiss German accent, her dialogue was dubbed by Nikki van der Zyl, a voice actress who would go on to dub several Bond girls throughout the series. Even so, Andress's on-screen presence was enough to cement her status as the ultimate Bond girl. Off-screen, she made quite the impression as well. Lois Maxwell, who played Miss Moneypenny, recalled how Andress would dance at rap parties without wearing a bra, something that left quite the impact on the crew. Speaking of casting, Sean Connery wasn't the first choice for James Bond. Ian Fleming initially wanted Cary Grant, but Grant was only willing to commit to one film. Fleming also considered David Niven and his own cousin, Christopher Lee. But producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli saw something special in Connery. He had the rugged charm and commanding presence needed to bring Bond to life. Still, he wasn't quite the refined secret agent we know today. Director Terrence Young took Connery under his wing, introducing him to fine dining, tailored suits, and the kind of high-class lifestyle that defined Bond. One of the most nerve-wracking scenes for Connery was the infamous tarantula scene. The actor had a deep fear of spiders, so to pull off the shot, filmmakers placed a glass pane between Connery and the spider. Even with this precaution, the fear in his eyes was real. In fact, when reshooting the scene for close-ups, they brought in stuntman Bob Simmons to let the tarantula actually crawl on him. Simmons later said it was the most terrifying stunt of his career. Despite its limited budget, Dr. No was a box office smash, raking in over $59 million worldwide and kickstarting the longest-running film franchise in history. It also caught the attention of one very important fan, President John F. Kennedy, who requested a private screening of the film at the White House. His endorsement helped solidify Bond's status as a cultural phenomenon. Over the years, Dr. No has been reevaluated by critics and fans alike. While some initially dismissed it as a simple spy thriller, it's now recognized as the blueprint for the modern action film. It introduced gadgets, exotic locations, memorable villains, and a hero who would go on to define cool for generations. And let's not forget that Dr. No also gave us some of the most quotable lines in movie history. The very first time we hear Bond introduce himself with the legendary Bond, James Bond, happens right here. That single line, delivered with Connery's signature swagger, became one of the most iconic catchphrases in cinema. Now it's time to hear from you. What if the censorship rules had been different? Could we have seen a much bolder, bare-naked Honey Ryder? Would it have made the scene even more iconic, or would it have been too much for 1960s audiences to handle? And what's your favorite Bond moment from Dr. No? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into classic cinema.